So many of us in our lives and our careers have robust schedules, times where we have so much to do on our plate, and many times what we're focusing on when we're in those periods of time is how can I get better balanced? But what if we were chasing after the wrong thing? What if it wasn't about being balanced, but rather balancing? Hi everyone, Chris Natzke here with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching with your Mind of a Champion tip of the week. What if it wasn't about being balanced? What if it was about balancing? You know, several years ago, I was at a National Speakers Association meeting here in Denver. And there was a speaker, he was the keynote speaker of the event, and somewhat of a very unusual background. He actually began his professional career being a professional busker. So if you don't know what that is, that's the kind of person that's out on the boardwalk, if you will. In his case, he was from San Francisco, and they were juggling and keeping people entertained, and that's how he got his start. But he, interestingly enough, transformed that into a career using those same skills in speaking to corporations, doing quite well as a professional speaker. So he was addressing us in the group, and he was, juggling balls and bowling pins and machetes, and he was on a unicycle. He was doing this whole thing. Incredibly entertaining, incredibly engaging speaker. But during one portion of his talk, he kept looking over at a lectern or a podium that was made out of plexiglass. And I couldn't help but noticing that he kept looking over there. In fact, it was somewhat distracting. And then finally he said to all of us in the group, he said, I've been wondering about this all morning, if I could do this. And he nonchalantly walked over to the plexiglass lectern, which was not real stable. He was moving it. It was actually wobbling a little bit. And he proceeded to put both the palm of his hands on top of the lectern. And before we knew it, he came up into a full handstand on top of the lectern. Now, of course, it got all of our attention. And he had set it up talking about this idea of, in our lives, we're constantly trying to have work-life balance. And he said, the fact of the matter is we are never going to be achieving being balanced. He goes, take a look at my hands right now. Notice I look like I'm balanced on top of this lectern, but if you were to look at my fingers, you'd see me constantly moving them back and forth so that I was gaining balance on the podium. He said, I'm not balanced, I'm balancing. I'm not balanced, I'm balancing. And then he stopped talking and he got off the lectern and he started walking around again and giving the rest of his keynote. And I was like, whoa, did this guy just, sit up there or stand up there on his hands for several minutes as he was talking to us? So obviously it left an impression on me. But it made me think about, how do we do that in our own lives? Are we constantly striving to be balanced when we really should be focused on balancing? Because there are going to be times in our lives when our schedules are such that it's going to be very difficult to be balanced. And in fact, sometimes it's good, because if you ever think of anyone that's created something really worthwhile, during that creative period, they've probably been a little bit out of balance. But it's not about staying in that imbalanced state. It's about then working later on balancing. So I've got 4 ideas for you right now to kind of help you through this idea of being balanced, or working on balancing versus being balanced. And the first thing is to make sure that you accept the fact that you're never going to be balanced. It's just not going to happen. And if it is, it's going to be for a microsecond, and then something's going to happen in our world. So, it's like Vince Lombardi said something, I'm paraphrasing. He said, we chase perfection, but we know we're not going to meet it. But as a result of that, we achieve excellence. So we know we're never going to be balanced, but in our road of balancing and actively trying to do that, we will achieve, the types of lives and careers that we want. Number 2 is welcome changes. This is probably the hardest one for me. I tend to like to be pretty regimented in terms of what I do in my life and have a set schedule. And when something comes and it disrupts that, it can be pretty discombobulating for me. But the fact of the matter is rather than resist those things where we have to adapt, change, and rebalance, what if we got to a place as we welcome them? And we allowed them to come in, because knowing that they oftentimes, if we treat them well, mean another stage of growth for us. So welcome changes. Number next is give yourself credit for yourself on your road to balancing. You know, it's easy to get imbalanced in this world. But if you're constantly looking to readjust between work and your health and wellness, your spiritual growth, your relationships, and you're navigating that well on a balancing route, give yourself some credit. It's not an easy road. It's not an easy road. And then finally, think of it this way, particularly with those that we love, and particularly those that we're leading in our organizations. It's not necessarily about the quantity of time. It's about the quality of time. You know, if you've got a big project at work and it's really taking you away from your regular home life and your regular routine for that period of time as you're working on that project, you better make darn sure that when you are home, that you're there. John Kabat-Zinn has a great book. He says, wherever you are, be there. So think about that. If you are dealing with times in your life where there is imbalance, and particularly if it's impacting you personally, make sure that the times that you are at home and you are with your family and loved ones, that you're actually there. Because again, it's not about the quantity of time, it's about the quality of time. So there you have it, my friends. There's 4 ideas on how we can move from chasing this idea of being balanced to accepting the fact that we're in a constant state of balancing. And if you got some ideas around this, I'd love to hear your comments. And if you got value from this, would love to have you share it with your friends and family as well. So anyway, folks, that's what I got for you today. This has been Chris Natzke with Black Belt Leadership Speaking and Coaching, and we'll see you next time on the Mind of a Champion Tip of the Week.